I was captivated by your story because you've been inventing before it was easy, right?
Yeah.
You've been doing this
now.
for 20
Yeah.
years. You said in our discovery call that you used to have to fax drawings to Hong Kong, essentially, to communicate your ideas.
Yeah.
And now look where we are. But before we get into all that, so Terrence, just give us a little bit of background around you and inventing and how you came into this world.
Sure. Well, I mean, I kind of fell into this, like I think in a lot of ways, most people who are like inventors, you come into it with an idea, with some sort of formulation of, oh, what if I could do this, right?
Sure.
It's not necessarily, something you set out to do in college. So I had studied painting and was working at the Museum of Modern Art. And I was actually photographing design products that were coming across my desk for their e-com site.
So they sold design products?
Yeah, so MoMA's design store has like the premier design items like Alto vases for like $1,000
Okay.
or Castiglione lamps, all the design icons.
Okay.
And so I was photographing all these things and I saw enough of them come across my desk that I was like, you know what, I could come up with something because this is kind of like, it's an art form of material. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of opened my mind to design or invention as a way of, as a creative outlet, right? And then it was like a matter of like, well, what could I imagine materials to become? Mm-hmm. And then, just an actual accident, I found magnets, and that's how that was how I invented my first product.
So what spurred you from seeing those magnets? You told us the story where you found them, and you had the idea. You kind of had an idea of what you wanted it to become. What was the bump that pushed you to actually researching, like you said, to fax the Hong Kong consulate or whatever it is, to push you enough to do that? Because a million people have ideas. There's something that pushed you over the edge to be like, I want this to be bigger.
It was funny because as an artist, I had my whole art career going on. Mm-hmm. And it was almost, my friends were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you pursuing this design thing? This is so weird. But for me, it was like, I just wanted to pursue it. It was almost like I needed, what I was saying, we have that itch sometimes where it's like,
oh yeah,
you just want to know, like, where does this go? What is the next step? And that's often all you need is just, you don't need to understand the whole staircase. You just see that first step and you take that step. And then you take the next step. And in fact, that's how I ended up with the bracelet, because it was faxing the Hong Kong Trade Commission, asking for, sources for magnetic manufacturing, and then realizing the limitations. The companies didn't want anything to do with an individual, having to parlay that into like coercing them essentially to send me some samples of like, a small
They didn't
box.
want anything to do with a little guy. Is that what you're saying?
This is the biggest hurdle, right? It's
Yeah.
like we're all facing like, how do I get something produced? How do I get even a production sample made, right? So I was kind of leveraging my position at MoMA with the office address at the Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
And I was like, send me some samples to this, And they were like, oh, Museum of Modern Art, yes, sir.
Heard of it. Yeah. Before we, can you, the first idea was the bracelet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Marcus kind of skipped over it, but you were playing with magnets on your desk, right? When that idea hit you.
Yeah.
So tell me
actually.
how you thought of it, and also show us the camera, the product that was the end result.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, it's like this is literally something that I found, not these exact magnets, but I found magnets in the trash for a puzzle piece. It was like a geodesic dome that had little magnets inside.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a waste. Who's throwing away these magnets? You could put these on your fridge. It's crazy. So I'm breaking them up and I'm putting them out. And as it reached kind of critical mass, this like all these little black dot magnets stuck together into a line.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, well, what if you could make a bracelet that was only made of magnets and you could literally pull it apart anywhere, put it together anywhere?
Yeah.
What would be the strength you would need? And then, what was the ideal shape and how would you form it? And so I made this. This is actually a second or third generation of the design.
Okay.
And and that was kind of how I fell into product design. I did not have a plan. And when I showed it to the production manager at MoMA, she was like, "Oh my God, that's genius. Where did you get this?" I was like, "I made it." She's like, "Oh, come with me." And she took me into the buyer's office, this like head buyer, Museum of Modern Art.
The hell?
She's like, "Look at this." And she's like, show her and I'm like, "Oh yeah, so here's and then you put it apart and you pull it apart. And she's like, "Oh my God, where did you get that?" She goes like, "Terrence invented it."
Now you're an inventor.
And then I was like, yeah. And then it was sold at MoMA Design Store.
Wait. You can't just jump to that so fast. You're not one of those. We're not going to let one of those guys come on this show. So next thing I know, I'm in Walmart, and that's pretty much the end of my success story. So good luck, everybody. Slow down. So how do you go from playing with it on a desk? When you showed it to the buyer, was it still a prototype, like the junk
it wasn't
magnets?
even a final version like this. It was they were square, so it didn't roll around your brain. So it was just rectangular, which was kind of cool too. It was more arty, punk rock, and but it was enough that it showed the concept in action, right? And they were like, "Well, how much is it?" And I literally, like on the spot, was like, $80.
What?
And it was like, that's the retail, I said $40 wholesale.
Yeah.
Because one thing I understood in working at MoMA was that the prices of things did not reflect the actual value of the material.
Not at all.
So thank God I did that, because like it literally set me up for such a success in the future, because I think a lot of times we're very like, I don't know, intimidated. We want to hit the lowest price possible.
Yeah.
But you're creating value. And I think in a lot of ways, like people appreciate your design, the concept of it, and you brought that thing to life. So why not be compensated in a way that's fair? So, I mean, I later lowered the prices, but at that initial stage, I just put it at $40 wholesale, and they retailed them at $80, and they sold all day long.
Wow.
MoMA did?
MoMA did.
Museum.
Because that's where I was working. So I was working at the design store.
Yeah.
So when they said, "Well, do you have any you can sell?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I better
I
fax
will.
the trade commission again."
I think that's what you just brought up was really important, because one of the biggest fears is, how much is my product worth?
Yeah.
And the market tells you that quick enough, right? Sometimes you get out there and people aren't buying it, you have to lower your price. But also, it's to counter all the internet trolls. All day long, you're getting like, "I wouldn't pay $5, or I could build that for $3. And you're like, you sure as hell could, but you have to do 37 things to do it. And by the time you've done that, what's your time worth? And it's $120 of your time. It doesn't equate to that. So you do, like, and especially in yours, it's such what a luxury to have it be in a place that's art, and people can't knock that price because it's somebody else's art.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it was a lucky thing.
When you, how did you, when the buyer at Museum of Modern Arts wanted to start selling it in their store, what kind of quantity were you guys looking at?
I think the initial order was like 4,000 something.
Wow.
And this was at the request of the buyer at MoMA?
Yeah.
He's like, let's get at least 4K. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and you...
$4,000, so it was like 100 units.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
sorry.
Oh, 100 units.
Yeah.
Okay. So your first order, you thought, how am I going to come up with 100 units? The year is 2002.
2002. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So you said that how did you even know to hit up this Trade Commission Hong Kong?
I can't. I don't even remember how I came to that. But there was no Kickstarter. There was no Alibaba. This was like, people didn't even have websites. I was literally involved in developing the website for MoMA, and so it was like early days. And so I just sort of, I think there was a, oh my God, I can't remember the name of it. There was a trade registry for domestic production, and maybe the name will come to me, but it was in that I figured out that, I could actually call other trade associations. And then I think I just looked in the phone book or something crazy.
The phone book.
Yeah.
For those of you out there, a phone book is
Oh, see, you grab yourself a phone book, see?
back in my day.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew it happened, but we've never, certainly I've never spoken to an inventor, a product developer, whatever you want to call it, who had to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
And this is, 2002, it's not a long time ago, and it was still 10 times more difficult than it is now, I'd be willing to say. All right, so how'd you go about getting 100 units made?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of like saying, okay, so now I'm going to order, you increase the purchase order, and they were happy. But it was almost always a gamble. And, anybody whether you guys are talking about trade shows last year, I remember like putting trade shows down on a credit card so that I could hope to make the orders back during the show. And a lot of times I was just leveraging, one thing to get to the next. So it was, I don't know how I paid for that first purchase order, but I'm assuming it was something like that where, because, I didn't have the money yet.
Yeah.
And I had to get the order fulfilled. But the crazy part was as soon as the order was filled, they sold out in like a month. And so I had that cash back. So at those margins, of course, it was just like, okay, now I'm good.
Yeah.
And I could order more styles, and the factory was like getting a little looser with me, and they were lowering their minimum order quantities. And so I was just like experimenting. And then in the space of like 2 years, I had a whole line of magnetic jewelry. And then the YouTube thing happened. That was like when things really got crazy.
Oh man, should we get into that yet? I hate to skip past those early days because our audience, this podcast, like it's about those days where, hey, I'm working a 9 to 5. I got to just pull myself up by my bootstraps and get going. So was there ever a point in your mind where you were playing with the bracelet and you're like, this is dumb? Maybe like the buyer said he was interested, but maybe you're just like, God, did you ever feel like a phony about it?
I mean, well, here's one for you. I never put my name in my own catalog for like 2 or 3 years.
Why?
Because I just didn't think that anybody would want to know my name. It was like, I just was like, ooh, I'm not a designer.
Right.
I'm not these people.
Like impostor syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have that backing
Yeah. And I didn't have that cachet, and then, it was a few people that were asking me like, well, who's the designer? And they kept asking at MoMA, like, who's the designer? And finally, there was another artist, another designer, their daughter was at the museum and bought one of my bracelets and was like, I have to meet this person, whoever designed it.
No kidding.
And that was Monica Castiglione, and her dad, Achille Castiglione, invented the famous lamp with the huge marble base and the arch with the little ball lamp at the bottom. And it was like, design royalty. I was like meeting the people who were at the top. And then I felt like, okay, now I have a
bit of clout.
I belong, But it is a struggle.
That was, you're one of the few who had a very quick success. I feel like that's considered a quick success. What was the first downfall or like punch to the gut for you in that process?
I think, it was the big part was like growing and trying to stay agile with it. At one point, I remember I had to like make a decision, like, am I going to keep my day job because I was so busy? And then I had to make that decision, like, okay, well, if I'm serious about this now, I'm going to have to jump into it. And that was when it was like, okay, this is real. This is not just like a side project anymore. I'm not actually, I can't think of an exact moment, but that was a moment where I was like, ooh, this is very serious now. I'm not like, this isn't for fun on a side hustle.
Yeah.
But as I got into that next stage of the business is when I definitely got into those gut punches, where things like you get a bunch of magnets that don't have the right coating suddenly you're just like, oh my God, I just have 2,000 units I can't sell.
Yeah. We've talked about that many times. Like
episode 9 was I just got 2,000 units and all but one are good. What do you do?
Yeah.
How did you handle those moments? I mean, certainly not with as much grace as you would today, knowing what you know now. But as a new inventor who maybe does order something and they get hosed on an order, what advice would you give them?
I mean, the most important thing is don't feel like that's the end, because it's definitely not. There's always, like, I don't know, in a weird way, you can extract some value from any of those circumstances, either whether, you get an agent then who's overseeing your production in China or wherever it's being done, making sure the quality control. Those are all the lessons that are taken in this process, right? So I think oftentimes we take hits as like, oh, you see, I can't do, I'm really not, I have that imposter syndrome thing. And I'm like, I really don't belong here. And see, this is proof that I was screwing up, and who am I kidding? And
Yeah.
But the fact is that you can't stop when you hit your first hurdle, because that's the opportunity that's hidden in the challenge. And so you have to stay on a mindset of like, what can I take from this experience? At this point now, what can I've just lost 2,000 units. Okay, I'm going to change this. And you can't just sit there and mull over it, and feel bad for yourself. You have to immediately act on it and say, okay, I'm going to change this now. I can get this quality control in place. And then I'm going to have to figure out how I can, the fact is there's no problem you can't solve.
Right.
But it's only you who says to yourself, oh, now I can't do this. And as soon as you say that, then that's it. You've given up.
Yeah. And so many inventors in the early stage, they find out that just inventing something and making a okay website, you don't get any traffic. So you learn I have to build an Instagram, and you say, well, I'm not a social media guy. The buck stops here.
Right.
What do you have to say to that guy's mindset?
I mean, not in this world. If you're going to be trying to market yourself, I don't know, unless you have a very specific product, like you were talking about, like for distribution, or you can find other channels for people to pick it up for you. But if you're selling a durable consumer good, and you need to get it out there, I mean, I got news for you. You're going to have to wear many different hats.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. Even my YouTube channel I wasn't a YouTube guy. I was just like some guy who thought, I'll make a video and put it on YouTube and we'll see what happens. And that's the attitude you should have. You shouldn't have the self-editing attitude where you're like preemptively telling yourself, no, I can't do it. I don't know. Can we swear on this?
Yeah.
Fuck that. You have to go and, this is your chance. You should be experimenting, and you should be as creative in your approach to your marketing, to your product development, to your ads, to whatever, as you are in developing the product. There's no difference. Well, it doesn't stop there.
Yeah. I mean, you can have the greatest thing in the world. If nobody sees it, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
And then also, I always like to say, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. And then every day, there's something new, and you add a new job title to what you are and who you are, and you just got to go with it. You got to go into it knowing you don't know crap, and then just be ready for it all, and not scared to like the YouTube or the marketing, and then also know that you'll hit a point where you'll hit a capacity to be able to do that, and then you can find somebody else who can pull that in or who can handle that.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, you have a good story. You were successful. You pulled a lot of people into your company or your group, and then you realized that wasn't the answer, and you started weeding it back down. But it took that. I think it's now that you took some hits on people and not being great people and all that stuff, which we can talk about. And then you're like, okay, you know what? I can do more of this stuff myself. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to just remember, right? I think people that get into this world, it's a very unique skill set, right?
You're not a normal person.
Yeah, you're curious already, right? So why does the curiosity stop at a certain point if you think that, this area is not for me? You should just adapt that same attitude, right? And then as you approach those problems, as we were saying, earlier, is like, I've always felt business is an opportunity for personal growth. And it's like, I don't think there's an accident there that a lot of people that excel at business are very avid personal growth people, because business will bring you to the thing that you're not good at, over and over again until you kind of give in and go, okay, I better learn this. Like I was never good at accounting. I'm still not great.
Right.
But I learned that I have to know a certain amount. And then I have to trust other people. But you can't have enough information to judge who it is you're going to trust unless you have some skin in the game yourself.
Yep.
So when you're hiring people, and in the earliest stages of my business, I was just hiring because I was like, looks like a good resume. I don't know. And then later finding out these people don't know. This is like total bullshit. So that was a big learning curve to bring on, people that are very, high salaries, a lot of expectation, and just totally not deliver. And you're just like, oh my God, painful.
Rarely is that person, that man or woman that you hire, do they have the equipment necessary to function in a small business like ours and like what yours was at that point? You can be doing $10, $15 million a year in revenue, but still really be on a small business model. Yeah. We're an e-com. We pick, pack, and ship. We run some social medias, and we keep track of the numbers. That model is really the same whether you're doing $100,000 in sales or like 15 million in sales. Obviously, there's slight changes. But the point I'm getting at is you hire this person who's designed for the corporate environment, and you stick them in an environment where we're all self-driven. We all have to make those difficult choices. Well, I don't know. Is this good for the company? If this was your company, what would you do? And that's few and far between. That's very hard to find. So hiring these company people, these salary people, they're like, what do you want me to do and when? And what time are we off work? How long is my lunch break? That just doesn't work with an inventor. Start building a small team. Really what I recommend is like finding people that you would partner in eventually. And maybe partner them in eventually. Maybe have them vest in for a 5% after 5 years, whatever it is. I could go on and on. But I want to go back to your story. Take us to... So you saw some success with the bracelet in the beginning, which is kind of rare, but it wasn't by accident. You were putting yourself out there. You were doing the things. You were trying. Nothing is by accident, right?
Right.
At what point in the journey did you make the YouTube video?
So I had the MoMA design store. Obviously, it was selling well. I figured I'd call other museums, and I got some more museums involved. Then I was like, I should do some trade shows. So you guys just had the trade show episode. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. So how do I do a trade show? I didn't know. So it was like, I'm an artist. I can figure this out. And then I just came up with some tricks, like I was showing you guys in the, with the bracelet. Yeah. And I would do those tricks as buyers would walk by and, oh, hey, it's a magnetic bracelet. Like you can see it here, and they would be like, oh my God, that's crazy, And then you're engaging with them and then suddenly you're talking, right? So I grew from there. And then I thought, you know what? I was working at the office one day and I was about to leave. And I was like, let me just throw some of those tricks together in a short video. And I set up the camera really hastily with like a background, shoddy paper behind me. And I shot a 1 minute video and I was like, okay, how many tricks can I do in 1 minute? That's like my time limit. Posted it. It was November 2006. In December, it was, I came into the office, I turned on my computer, and back in the day, it was a PC that had this little ding every time you got an email. Yeah. I turned on the PC, and it was like ding, 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 ding. Didn't stop for an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what is happening? And there's like all these YouTube comments. I'm like, what the hell? I go to the main page of YouTube. My video is the front of YouTube, like the number one. It was just like, holy crap. And I'm sitting there in the office by myself, like.
Who do I share this with? Hey, janitor, get in here.
And it was funny because it's like YouTube at that time was really not a place for product. It was a place where people were just talking about their lives.
Yeah, going to the zoo, film it, get 30,000 views for no reason. Yeah.
Nerd, culture and subculture. And people were even saying like, "Whoa, are you allowed to put products on YouTube?" And like comments
Wild
like that.
West,
man. But it changed me overnight.
We talked about that as well. I mean, now you could you would never have that amount of success doing that on YouTube as far as anything getting to a front page. And it's such a, it's such a transition from how it would go from user algorithm and what people liked versus what it chooses for you these days. And I mean, it's amazing, those older videos.
Yeah.
There's parts that were more difficult back then, and there's parts where like you could fall face first into money.
Yeah.
You know, and there's things like that in every generation. There's something out there like that right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a matter of, are you going to be in the right places to figure it out? So the 300 million people that were alive with you in the year 2006, not on YouTube, you know, they all at that same time were looking for that next big thing. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, right under their nose in their crappy little PC computer was the ability to film yourself and reach an immense audience overnight. But you just don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And I always encourage inventors now, just think, just be forward thinking. If it sounds crazy, it's probably worth trying. Anyway, that's my tangent. But so what was the name of that video? Because I know the people listening right now, they want to go straight to YouTube.
Magic Magnetic.
Magic Magnetic.
Yeah. And then I think it's bandolier. It's like the bandolier, the thing with the
holds bullets on your chest.
Yeah, with the bullets on the chest.
Oh.
It had that same shape. So the you know, like these. So that was also called bandolier. But basically, if you look up, you know, Magic Magnetic or magnetic bracelet, it's the number one. It's the oldest one on there. So
Okay, cool. Does my audio sound okay to you guys?
Yeah, sounds
okay.
perfect.
Sounds
I just got in my head about it. Go ahead.
No, you. So this is all. We started the beginning of this is all about magnets and your magnetic bracelet, but that's not you today, right?
No.
Okay.
And that was kind of a story of change. You know,
Yeah.
a transition, pivoting moment in the business was like, you know, the bracelet was awesome. It launched me. It became this thing that everyone in the world literally had seen that video. It felt like, and so like, it was. With that came a lot of downside, and you know, the magnetic bracelet was copied in almost instantly. You know, within a few months, and then months or maybe a year after that, a couple of years after that, it was turned into a kind of toy concept, which became really problematic for me personally because I was avoiding the whole risks to kids with the magnetics being jewelry and also warning people about, you know, magnets.
And that's because it's small and individual, and those pieces could be
choking pieces.
Okay,
and
yeah.
then
just so everybody understands. Yeah.
There's also a risk with magnetic pieces. If you swallow one, probably won't have a problem. But if you swallow two magnets separately with a space of 10 minutes,
And they pinch your colon
they
together?
will pinch together inside your body,
Yeah.
causing severe damage.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where I was like, okay, I need to find a way forward that's not, because it became such a trend in the whole industry. There was like 1 million magnetic videos out there. And I was like, I need to like move into my other thing. So at the time I had come up with this concept for a wallet, which was like, you know, this folded piece of Tyvek. I was like, what? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to pursue the magnetic jewelry for, you know, like whatever, hell be damned. I'm just going to go into the wallet. And it turned out to be like the best decision I was ever forced to make because the wallet became a much more sustainable brand. It's a product that it's one of 3 things you're carrying, you know, on your person right now: a wallet, phone, and your keys. And that's it. So like you have an incredible brand value. You're establishing a relationship with people every day. Every time they go to buy something, it's like, oh, that's a cool wallet. Where'd you get that? People say, oh, it's Mighty Wallet. You should check it out. Literally, like for years, that's how the brand grew because one person told another person, told another person.
And you used the word Tyvek. People don't know what Tyvek is.
Right.
So what is Tyvek?
Well, Tyvek is it's a brand name for a material which is essentially made by DuPont. If you've ever gotten an express mail envelope from FedEx, one of those, it's like crinkly paper, you know, it feels like paper, but you can't rip it. It's impossible. That's Tyvek.
Yep.
And the Tyvek in envelopes is actually a much thinner grade. It's the thinnest grade they actually make. So for my wallets, I use the second to thickest grade, and they're all origami.
Oh.
And the reason it's origami is because like one, it's super easy to produce because it's just one sheet of
A die
die cut,
Yeah.
and it's folded. How hard is that to produce? It's not too hard.
It's easy to print on it as well. And
Exactly.
Change, yeah. Okay.
So there was some of that went into the design concept as I was developing the product. It was like, I knew I wanted to make a wallet in Tyvek, but why? How would you make a wallet differently because of Tyvek, right? And that became a journey into like origami and, who's going to produce this? Those types of questions. And it's like, because I'd go to wallet companies and they'd be like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Like we make leather wallets,
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what's so important also that people always say, oh, my ideas probably already exists or it's out there. Wallets, there's 40 billion different types of wallets out there,
God,
and you
yeah.
chose to do another wallet, but you're becoming madly successful for a different idea on top of an idea that already exists.
Right.
Right. Did MoMA, have you thought, or is MoMA printing any art in your wallets? Have you thought?
Yeah, we did some collab ones
Yeah.
where they did for exhibitions and stuff
Okay.
and put their logo
Cool.
on it. Yeah, we definitely did that. I did some other Tyvek accessories like handbags and things for MoMA, which was really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, but Tyvek's actually a really interesting material because, its tensile strength is insane. It's like super strong, and yet it's relatively inexpensive material. And there's a lot of like the thing was that I'd seen the envelopes and I was always like fascinated with how strong they were. And I literally had one that I tore apart, pinned up on my ideal wall. And that was the reason why I kind of came up with the wallet. Like I was just like, I know there's something else that there has to be something I can make with that other than like an envelope. And so it was one day I was just like randomly like searching, crazy shit on the internet. And I found duct tape wallet instructions and all this like whole world of culture of people making
I
duct
remember
tape
those.
wallets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so cool because duct tape, of course, it's so strong. Everyone knows duct tape is like holds New York City together. And I was like, what else could I use to make Tyvek? And I was like, dude, yeah. And I, searched it. No one was doing it. And then I was like, okay. So, started a whole year, again, a year of development. Like, how can I make this? Then if you get a prototype, where do you go with that? And how do you get that first order? All those steps I had to go through all over again.
By the time you were into wallets, were we past the faxing?
Yeah. Thank God.
So how did
There was
you
email?
Did you already have connections from the magnet lifetime in as far as manufacturing goes, or did you have to start fresh?
Well, since it was a new industry, a new area, I started fresh, and I was looking domestically at first for Tyvek manufacturers in the United States, printers, converters, and then the pricing quotes I was getting were really exorbitant. So it was just like, okay, so I have to go figure this out in China, and then I was like, well, what? And this is often something I think as inventors we do is like, well, what exists that's similar to what I'm doing? And then can I contact somebody who makes that to try to make this?
Yeah.
And that's all I did. I just thought, okay, envelope manufacturers. Who's making envelopes in Tyvek? Go to one of those people and then smooth your way into
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And I showed them my YouTube video, which didn't hurt, just to show that I had some pull. And they were like, this is when China could still see YouTube, by the way.
Okay.
And I actually sent the instructions in a video of me folding the wallet to show them how to do it. And they actually produced a sample. And I was like, okay. And they're like, okay, so first order is $25,000.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like,
For how many units?
I think they were like almost $5 a unit at that point.
Okay.
It was just, they were just like covering their ass because they didn't want to, they're like, this is crazy. We're never going to see this guy again. And we have to invest all this research and development with this new idea of this guy. And so they charged me a lot.
That's a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah.
$5 a wallet back in what year?
2006, 2005 was the first batch.
2005. Yeah, they were really putting you through it.
Yeah.
Like you said, they were vetting you more than anything.
Yeah.
I love that didn't make you stop because In your mind, did you think you could sell them for $20-$30?
I mean, with the bracelet behind me, I thought, yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah, you had a
I'm gonna
really
sell
good
for
take.
$340 million.
I put a Gucci logo on
Yeah.
it, maybe. That would be short-lived.
Yeah.
So, no, I literally got these boxes of wallets and thought, oh my God, what am I going to do?
And were they just plain? Were they just plain, like a plain white or black wallet?
Oh, no, so I made like one that looked like an airmail
Okay, so
envelope.
those were your
They had
first ones.
certain graphics. So they had that was the thing. I also took this into a direction that was kind of tongue-in-cheek, like plays off of the idea of it feeling like paper.
Yeah.
And so it made a sort of nostalgic aspect to the product. The airmail envelope is something we can all identify with, and has a certain sense of like, oh, it comes from a foreign land, and playing off those emotional connections and the nostalgia of that idea was where a lot of the early designs came from.
With the die and the print, was it difficult to convey to them where to print in reference to how they cut out that die? In other words, by the time they folded up, maybe the airmail logo was on the inside.
Oh, please. I mean, if you're working with China, I mean, you have no idea how things are going to end up.
Yeah.
So you really have to be super specific.
Yes.
And that's when I learned about tech packs. And I don't know if you've ever covered a tech pack, but it's basically like, when I was doing them initially, they were Excel page documents. And in that document, it have every single drawing of every conceivable notion for the product that I could come up with.
Okay.
So you print it on this side, and this is the side that then goes down when you start folding it, like literally every single step, so that there could be no confusion. And that was, at that point, I was surprised that they arrived correctly, because there's so many opportunities for people to make mistakes in production. So.
And you said that you actually traveled over there. At what point in this process did you say, "Hey, I need to head over there and meet these people in person"?
I think it was when I had been like 2 or 3 orders into this wallet that I was like, okay, this is happening, and I had heard it from other manufacturers, other people in my industry, in the gift industry. Oh, you really should go to see the factory because you got to start developing a relationship. And it's true. You don't want to be in a relationship with a factory where you don't know what's going on. And so it's important to have, people that can go on the ground for you, whether those are agents or, people that are inspectors,
Third-party QC.
Third-party QCs. But you coming as the representative of the brand, as the inventor, it pulls a lot of weight, and people really respect that, and they'll definitely next time you want to oh, hey, could we do 500 units of this? This is this crazy idea I have, and they're like, okay, we'll just do it. Yeah,
Right.
For you, Terrence.
Right.
And you're building a relationship with a factory, and that's where it starts. And going to those dinners and sitting in these. Really, crazy environments and
Smoking the ciggies.
Oh, God, and that awful rice liquor. They just, please.
Yeah, that's what Steven said
sock
about
juice.
it. I told you that I had to send Steven, our head of sales, or my head of sales, to China because I had just had the baby. But even now, when I'm group texting with China and Steven's in on, and Steven chimes in, he gets the emojis and the winkies and the thumbs up. I get nothing from these guys. And what Steven got us put us leaps and bounds ahead of where we were. And I'm like, damn, if I know they feel some type of way about me still, the owner sitting behind, pulling the strings. So I got to get my butt over there, man.
Yeah, but in the same way, it's good to leverage that because it's almost like, that's the intro act to the main act. When you get over there, they're going to be like, okay, now we're going to,
The big boss is here.
Yeah, the big boss is
We
here.
like to be as open as we can about prices and things like that. Do you remember how much it cost you your first big venture out to China?
I mean, the plane ticket was maybe 1,600.
Okay.
And I took coach.
Yeah.
It was from New York City to Hong Kong was 16 hours.
Oof.
So meditation is a good thing to have in your
Meditation
skill
or
set.
money. You can buy a cheap ticket and meditate, or you can spend a lot of money and sleep or whatever.
Yeah. So And then once you get there, everything's pretty cheap. So staying in a hotel, I don't know, it's like 50. And then the factory actually covered the hotel.
Okay.
So I didn't have to, I was prepared to pay for it. And then they were like, no, we have this. And so later, when I was staying at better hotels, they were like, okay, well, it's on you.
Right.
But they also know what's close, and because trying to plan in advance for a trip to China is impossible. You have to rely on the factory.
Oh,
because it's just like forget it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard that too. It's scary. It's scary, right? So when you went viral with the bracelet video, were you selling e-commerce at that time?
Yeah.
So you were kind of ready for an e-commerce. I wouldn't say a flood, but you were prepared to take orders.
Yeah.
How did you handle being just swamped with orders from getting 4 million views in 30 days?
Yeah, it was so exciting and totally terrifying.
Yeah.
Because here is that opportunity that, we're sitting on the sidelines wondering if it'll ever happen, and it happens. And you're like, oh shit, how do I do this? Like I had so many orders. There was we almost instantly sold out of every magnet I had in stock. I had to find new, because the factory even I was working with couldn't produce enough. They're like, oh, maybe we could make 10,000 in a month. I'm like, I need more than that. Like I'm gonna need more.
Yeah.
So then it just was like, you have to jump into that creative mode again. What other factories are nearby. And you also, now you have this leverage, right? Because everyone has, if they haven't seen it yet, they will see your video. So every step of the way, you're leveraging this past experience for the next one. And so I'd find a new factory, maybe they could make 1,000 units. Fantastic. And then it was also good, and this wasn't something that I had planned, but it's always good to have a couple production sources, whether they're active or they're lined up. Mm-hmm. And this was a lesson that I learned later in the worst way possible, because factories do disappear. Mm-hmm. They can disappear overnight. And this happened to me. A factory I had worked with for many years. This guy just had a huge gambling debt apparently, and took out all the money, all the inventory, everything that was in the factory. And from morning to night to morning, he was gone.
Damn.
And no one knew where he was. And it was just like, oh, wow.
Swimming with the fishes.
Yeah.
No, he paid his debt. He liquidated everything.
Yeah, he did.
And at that time, did you already have somebody lined up, or that was your first introduction to, I need somebody lined up?
Well, what had happened on the previous visit to the factory, I was saying I used to go every 6 months just to keep tabs on things. I had gotten this sort of, one of the things you do in a factory visit is you go off script, right? Mm-hmm. You don't walk around wherever they tell you to go. You just start walking wherever the fuck you want to go, because there's some reason why they're keeping you on the path. And so I just was sort of walking through other areas of the factory, and then I started looking, and it sounds insane, but like, this is who I am. You have to have a couple pair on you, and just go, and they're like, no, don't come over here.
Is that where you saw the blackjack table?
Yeah.
You're like,
close.
A severed finger on the table.
And I looked through some garbage cans, and I found a wallet of my competitor.
Oh.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to need a plan B.
Yeah.
And so when I got back to New York, I was like, all right, God, now what? But I had my agents at the time, and they were already, and there were many factories eager to help. It's a funny little side story, but like when I would get invited to visit other factories, I would arrive and they would have a setup of my knockoffs, like my wallets that they had produced themselves. And I think it was in a way of just show to like, oh, we can do your wallet. You see, we're already doing it.
Innocent enough.
We're doing it for 10 other people. Yeah. You're like, Okay.
And it was like, okay, I see you can actually do it. So that's actually great.
Okay.
And in the end, it ended up saving my ass, because when that moment did happen, I did have other places that I could go to. And you never know when that day comes, No. That's the scary part.
This story alone could be an anxiety breakdown for people who are like, oh, knockoffs and other things and factories.
Yes.
Ease some minds there.
Yeah.
It's not that scary, is it?
Right.
Okay.
No. And I think one thing that is never really fully fleshed out about production in China is that you're naive if you think they're not selling it to somebody else.
Right.
That's how you're getting your margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like whether they're sending it to a secondary market in China or some other country that you'll probably never see, they're making other units and selling them. I think that's pretty much what's happening.
A given. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like there's other elements. I had a train of thought there. Something else I was going to say about.
I'll branch off of it, and when it comes back, just interrupt me. But the knockoff thing, you could get so focused on, but if I get knocked off, then I hear that so often. Well, then companies would just knock me off, and screw it anyway.
Right.
You kind of read those threads in Reddit, dude. If you're getting knocked off, you're killing it. Like,
Right.
You actually have a good idea.
Right.
And the thing about China is they freaking suck at selling stuff. No offense to them, but they will tell you, we are really good engineers. We are really good manufacturers. We do not know how to sell this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe they can in China, but Chinese products and U.S. products, two totally different things. You printing The Simpsons on wallets means very little to them. So if you're sitting here and think, God, if I got knocked off, I would just blow my brains out. No, big deal. Just be the first, be the best, and believe in it. Believe in what you're doing.
Now, you actually just brought up a good point, though. Some of your wallets have things that are artwork that's licensed.
Yeah.
Okay, is that something that you had to figure out how to deal with licensing?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and this is a kind of an interesting sort of solution to some of those IP concerns that people have, right? Now, my product just happened to be a vehicle for graphics, but there's other ways you can license with brands who have bigger legal pull than you do. Mm-hmm. And those brands will vigorously defend their IP. So in a way, you kind of get a strategic protection through a licensing arrangement if the brand is, active in protecting it.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example?
So, well, the most litigious probably is Disney. And when we did Star Wars products, I pretty much knew that no one was going to dare produce that because
They're
they
going to
didn't
get
want to
annihilated, right?
And that was a kind of protection for me. I was paying obviously the royalties, which is no small share.
I'm sorry, who are you paying? You were paying royalties to Disney to get the license to the
Artwork.
Right.
What's it called? Yeah, the artwork. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And you were getting some protection through that because, they're Disney and no one's going to F with them, right? Okay. Go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, I think in my realm where the wallet is a graphic vehicle, it was like, okay, what other graphic designs can I add to that? And that was a way of giving me that early protection.
Yeah.
But I think in other ways you can figure out other partnerships that potentially can protect you too, whatever your product might be.
Did Disney approach you, or did you approach Disney?
I think I approached them.
Okay.
At that point, we had done so much licensing with like other brands, but it was the new Star Wars was coming out at the time. It was the first time a movie had been produced in 20 years or something. And I was like, oh, this could be huge. Let's do this.
And did you hire someone who knows about how to deal with licensing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was there's the downside of licensing for whether it's the brand name or the whatever it might be, the graphics, the designs, whatever. The downside is that it is so meticulous in terms of brand approvals, which means that everything that you print on your wallet with that brand imagery on it or whatever has to go through a very scrupulous process. In the case of Disney, it was even so far that the factories itself had to have certain inspections. You had to pass inspection to go through. So there's not like, this doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah. Right.
This is a year-long investment into bringing something to life. And then not even mentioning the legal responsibilities of making sure the contract is appropriate, making sure you fully understand your responsibilities under it, because it can be, very onerous if you don't and you fail to make those commitments.
And how did you find the lawyer or whatever it is, law firm that helped you figure that out?
Well, there's a licensing trade show.
Okay.
And so you can register to visit it. I think it moves around every year. But there's also lawyers who are versed in licensing. I think that's how I met my first contact, and because I remember, I had no idea what I was doing, so I actually rented a booth at the licensing show, and that was so unusual for a product.
Right.
Usually, it's the brands that are selling.
This guy's
stuff.
got balls.
Yeah, and I was like,
He's thinking outside the booth.
yeah, totally. But the funniest thing is that, people were. It was such a different thing that literally gave me so much attention. And there were so many brands that were coming to me going, oh, I get it. You can print anything on this wallet. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, we represent this brand. And literally then I had all these people coming to my booth. It was unbelievable.
That's an awesome idea.
That's killer, man.
Just totally turned it around. But that wasn't intentional. It was just, again, it was like the YouTube thing.
Ignorance became brilliance.
You just you throw enough stuff against the wall and something's going to stick, and then that works, and then you take credit for it, and you own it.
Yeah, you say that's what I meant to do.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
And what you obviously had a first time licensing deal. What did you learn from then till what you know now? Would you change anything? Would you have changed anything or asked anything different or?
I think the first and foremost, most important thing is just knowing how much you're committed to every year. There's always a minimum royalty guarantee, and so you have to hit that baseline. So I think this is some scary numbers now. I think back, I'm like, how did I ever do this? I signed my name to this, but it was something like $50,000 in royalties.
Just the royalties you paid to them. They wanted it to be a minimum of 50
in 1 year.
In 1 year.
So you have to do the math to figure out how many units you have to sell.
Wow.
To meet that requirement.
And what was their royalty rate?
Well, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Those are NDA things. I'm still under but as far as ballpark for an average licensing agreement can be from 10% to 15% to at the top. Some brands, I think the Yankees are 20%, which is unheard of.
Wow.
The Yankees brand. But in that 18% range, that's when you're really talking about a lot of margin, and those are on all the tiers of your sales channels.
And they're taking 18% off the gross, the MSRP, if you will, of the or the retail price of what you're
the
selling?
Retail price. And then it's a smaller percent at wholesale and even smaller in distribution. Gotcha. So it's pretty much relative to the retail price.
Okay.
Interesting. So when you're I lost it. I just had it. Sorry.
But those are the reasons why I would, now looking back, I would be very cautious about signing those agreements, because a lot of times the brand will pitch you because they're interested in making money too, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And they'll say, "Oh, we got this going on and that going on and da da da," and then it's like any relationship, After that first date, you're just like, "Okay, where are you? Hello, did you?"
Right.
You're not answering my texts anymore. And then they're not doing squat for you, but you're on the hook for $50,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some
easy to get in, hard to get out.
Yeah.
Well, and they sell you on the fact they're like, we're this amazing X, right? Oh, let's just say Star Wars. I mean, you're like, oh man, these are gonna sell out the second I put them online, and maybe they do, or maybe that's cricket, and you're like, 50,000 or whatever it may be.
There's so much you don't know about a product launch. So if a brand is, that's why it's now, okay, here's a great lesson. It's only work with brands that are very established and are very not without spikes. So I wouldn't go into something expecting a great return for one event.
Yeah.
I would get into a brand that I felt I had a kinship with, that my consumers are obviously connected to, and then that has long-term brand value, not just because of a movie release or some other specific thing that's happening. Because those, you're putting too much, you're gambling a lot for that one potential return. And if it doesn't work out, well, then exactly that scenario happens, and you're just like, oh my God, like we didn't sell any of them. Like it's just a
But
nightmare.
you're still on the hook for X
Yeah.
amount. Yeah.
So to any listeners who have a invention idea right now that they maybe want to print a protected piece of art on, what do they Google search to find an agent to help them with that?
For licensing?
Yeah, so they can license like Disney art.
Oh, yeah. Well, so each brand is a little different, but most of them have licensing departments.
Okay.
And so they're not hard to find.
Okay.
You just, I mean, sometimes it's just contacting customer service and they'll put you in touch with whoever.
Oh, okay.
Because look, they're really interested in making money.
It's their job.
So their motivation is to connect with you.
And have you reached out to these licensing departments on your own, or have you always had a lawyer do that on your behalf?
Mostly it's on my own until we get to a place where it's, we want to talk terms. And then,
Are they usually pretty friendly to talk with you about things?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in most cases, like I said, it's a very unique marketplace, you know. There's no tangible good yet. It's all just, like if you go to the licensing show, it's crazy. There's just a bunch of desks.
Right.
That has to be
And
visually
it's just-
unappealing.
It's so strange. It's like everyone's just sitting down talking.
Yeah.
Ew.
Like that's it. And
Nothing to look at. Ugh.
no,
Yeah.
but they're all like, it's all paper and, percentages and this and that and da-da-da. And there's no visual, like very few brands that are out there doing that. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, it worked out great. But like I said, there's other ways of licensing. Like, I don't know. I mean, like you look at brands like Tommy Hilfiger, for example. They don't produce anything.
Oh.
Everything is a licensing deal.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So they're producing, what they're doing is they're selling their brand to other either manufacturers or other smaller tier people who are producing it. And in many ways, like the Trump brand is a brand similar that he puts his name on a building and then they get the royalties for that. They're not actually making the building.
Right.
Right.
So the licensing can have a lot of different relationships. It's cologne, perfume, all kinds of things, And now licensing is getting into this really creative space where, you see like Febreze licensing with like, I don't know, the crazy stuff.
Well, Swiffer will mix with like a cleaning solution, and it's like the Clorox
Right.
Swiffer or whatever it is. Yeah. They're
So-
collabing like it's hot.
Collabs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So speaking of licensing, was there ever a point in your inventing career where you're like, this is a cool idea, I'm just going to license it and collect checks while I do nothing?
I never had that thought, unfortunately. I think looking back now, there might have been good times where I could have just done that. But in some ways, I don't know. I think I was also sort of married to, I love the sort of the grit of running the business and the inventory. And it's almost like when it becomes your passion project and then you love it personally, it's really hard to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to sell this off.
Yeah,
But I could see that now, like looking back, I'm like, wow, I could have just gotten through so much stress.
You could. You know what's funny? And I think we might need to have somebody who's licensed their product on
We
here
need
as
a
a guest.
licensing success story.
We-
if you're
we do.
listening to this right now and you're in the LA area and you have a licensing success story where you haven't had to put in 10 years of work before you started making big money, that's what we need to hear, because that's the misnomer in this industry, the threads online is, I'm signing on with XYZ design company. I fork them over X grand, and they also take a percentage of whatever we make, and they're going to start pitching it, and fingers crossed, we'll see what happens.
But every single guest we've had on who's been an inventor themselves, that same thing. Oh, I thought about licensing, or I didn't even think about it. I wasn't going to run a company, and now I'm running a company. And it all had to do with, the numbers weren't right in the beginning, and then you just like, oh, I'm just going to start doing this. And you're like, oh man, now I'm going to start doing this. And before you know it, you're running a company, and you might hire somebody. That person, like Grant said earlier, you hire somebody into your company, but they don't care about your product. They want a paycheck and they have their whatever. And you're like, well, now it's me.
Yeah.
And but it's fun. It becomes fun. I didn't want to run a company, and I'm not amazing at it yet, but I'm enjoying it and I'm learning something new every day and I'm learning what I can and can't do and what my limits are, but I'm having a good time doing it.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it comes down to like, is it a product that you can actually realize yourself?
Yeah.
If it is, I would really say like it's worthwhile to go down that path, because like all those things can be very rewarding. You know, all those experiences of challenges where it's like something is pointing you to an area where like, oh, that's my weakness for sure. I look back on 20 years of being an inventor designer. I am not the same person I was 20 years ago. It's only because I took that path and said, okay, I'm going to make this stuff, and then having to go through every single obstacle and challenge along the way to get to where I am now. And so if I had sort of signed off, which is great, you know, you can sign a licensing, get something in your pocket, but I wouldn't have had all that growth from a personal perspective. And then I think, you know, then I was going to say the other thing is whether you can actually produce it yourself. If it's a product that's outside of your skill set, your knowledge, your expertise, whatever, then yeah, I would say probably looking for either the partnership or the licensing relationship is better.
Well, and the one thing that the magnet journey did for you is it gave you a stockpile of information and readiness for your wallet endeavor, right? Like by that time, you're like, I understand the manufacturing, I understand what I need to do and how to communicate and trade shows and whatever it is.
Yeah.
So do you think it's safe to say that, I think it's safe to say, but a lot of people's first inventions that they may think is the one that's going to take them all the way, maybe the first of 2, 3, 4 inventions?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all so precious too about our ideas. And that's another lesson, is we have to learn that, it's really important to take things very seriously, be careful about ideas, but also to realize that it's not going to be your last. And the idea that you're holding so preciously onto right now is just this kind of like an introduction into this whole world. Mm-hmm. Like I never intended to design like lunch bags, but I had kids. And lunch bags are disgusting. So I was like, I got to change this, you know, and then your little designer mind goes off and you're thinking, you know, so that's it. Just the fact is that, you know, we don't know, you know, this is our Achilles heel, I think, all the time, is we always want to know. We want certainty, the whole path. Yeah. I want to know where I'm going to end up and all that. That's a pipe dream. Mm-hmm. You don't know. All you know is what's in front of you, your next step. And then you take that step and you find out. But you can't like hold on to these, you know, that's one thing I think I've kind of mastered in a way. I don't get too precious around my ideas. If I feel like something has a potential, I go full in on it. And then if I feel like, okay, the pricing on this is just not there, whatever the factor might be that's giving me a bad vibe, it becomes like a gut feeling then. I'll just be like, okay, I got to go to something else. You know, forget that.
Well, and I think you said this already, but understanding the manufacturing and having your flaws and you know, trying these, it makes you a more defined and better inventor for that next product. Because now instead of being like, I wanted this, you're like, no, I know that's going to be so much more expensive to manufacture, or it's just impossible. So yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid that your first invention isn't the one that's going to be the big, huge thing, but take it as an amazing lesson that you start getting more and more refined. And that was really awesome that you said that about licensing. Licensing robs you a little bit. You know, hopefully you're successful there, but it robs you of all the lessons that take you to that next level or give you the opportunity to hone in those skills. You kind of just bypass all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, even now, and when I think about product design, like, you know, there have been a couple times where I was like either, you know, in contention for, you know, TVs, things, appearances for, you know, inventions. And I thought, actually, I'm going to design something completely separate that would just be this one thing for that one particular either event or, you know, whatever. And that's a much more interesting way to think about it, because, you know, when we get our big idea or whatever, we become totally focused on that one thing. But then I would challenge people to say, try to just do something else. Try to do something like totally out of your area, because it might be something that's just, it's also another form of exercise, but it just might be something that can, move you in a new direction. You discover new processes, and those collectively become your sort of design savvy, right? Now I feel like I'm, going into things, and I know how factories work. I know how to, grease the wheels and how to test people, and, know when I'm getting bullshitted, and, and that only comes from like having tested the waters many times. So yeah, just like get in there, don't worry about getting everything right. There's no such thing.
Yeah. We go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, how many inventions have you actively actually pursued out there, and how many were successful versus not?
Ooh, I've never thought about it. Let's see, the bracelet, the magnetic. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know. Maybe a ballpark 10 products that I've designed.
Okay.
I would say 3 or 4 of them hit, money, and others are just like, crazy ideas that I had. Like one thing I was in New York City, where I was living at the time, and they have these window washers who have these like insanely long poles, right? And I was like, dude, what if you put a camera on that? That would be so cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I came up with my 10-foot selfie stick thing.
Right. Okay.
And that was just kind of like, okay, what would it take to produce this? Who's making these things already?
Yeah.
And then it was, it didn't go anywhere. Actually, there are companies now making the same thing because they figured out how to market it right and get the margins right. I was just sort of
Timing.
Or the timing, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be a timing issue too. But the fact is, like, just trying a lot of different things and figuring out, like, just never feeling too committed to one thing, and then also never being too disappointed when it doesn't work out, because you got to just keep moving.
And what did you get patents on any of your stuff?
Initially, I got some patents, and then later I was like, where do I want to spend this 20 G's? Like
Yeah, we've talked about that too, and it's a very valid thing. That is a massive amount of money for all of us, but for the first time inventor, you're like, I've got saved up 10,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If 8 to 12 of that 10 are going straight to something that kind of is a myth for a couple years, then you might be better off spending it on promotion and
Yeah.
How do you ensure, it's 2024 now, you've had your ups, your downs, I'm sure you're pulling your hair out, selling $500,000 of a product in one quarter and none in the next quarter. Now in 2024, I'm sure you want a little bit more comfort in your life and your business. How do you ensure an even keel of sales every month?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, what a lot of people don't talk about is brand. And branding, in my book, trumps marketing every day. It's your brand that people come back to. Your product is great. People love your product. They're going to use it, whatever. But they come back to you as opposed to your knockoff, let's say, because they appreciate your brand, your identity, the personality you bring to the company. And people are connected to brands, not like they're connected to a product. So when they come back and they want to buy, a new strap, they're going to be like, oh no, I'm going to get, I'm not going to go.
I got a guy.
I got a guy. And they have a personal connection to you because they've not only purchased it and tried it, they're now telling their friends about it. And it's the same thing with like the wallet. So Mighty Wallet, to this day, I have customers who come back, it's been 10 years I've had my wallet. They send me a picture. It's amazing. It's all like beat to hell. And then they're like, I'm ready for a new one. And, they could come back and just, search on wherever and find some cheap-ass wallet made of Tyvek. There's plenty of them. But they'll come back, and even people internationally will pay the shipping that costs more than the product because they want an original Mighty Wallet.
Sure.
That's amazing to me.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think you probably, your prices are reasonable enough that the knockoffs, they might be decently cheaper, but not enough that people wouldn't want to come to tag the original.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, we're all, whether it's your competitor or you, we're all working under the same margins, right? So they can't, I mean, unless they have really big resources, they can't underprice you too much.
Right.
And then in the end of the day, it's a consumer decision. Are they going to test this like unknown brand? And some, personally as a consumer, I might once in a while try some cheap ass thing.
Yeah.
See what it's about, but then I probably will end up back to that original brand that I loved in the first place. And so branding is that sort of source.
Do you pay for any ads, traditional ads right now, ad space, Facebook Meta? Do you do that?
Yeah, we do. Well, it's an AI calculating thing that partitions amongst Google or Facebook, whichever is performing the best. And those algorithms determine where our marketing budget goes. So that's something that's built into an app in Shopify.
Interesting.
Oh, it's in Shopify. And where do you have you had the most success as far as advertising goes?
It's actually I'm not like most people. Most people, it's the proactive advertising on Instagram, Facebook, But for me, Google does really well.
Okay.
I think because of the brand. Getting back to that factor, it's where people just search and they're looking for me. They're coming to me with intentionality. Maybe they don't know me. Maybe it's, what was that thing made of Tyvek again? Google Tyvek something. Then Mighty Well comes up.
So you still need a little bit of an ad push to connect, but because the branding is there, that's what closes the deal.
Yeah, I
it's
think
kind of the funnel.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that? Okay.
And then for newer audiences where I'm trying to grow the brand, I'll reach out into TikTok. I do all kinds of, I'll take a longer format video and then I'll run it through the AI and get 30-second spots and run those stories on TikTok. That'll be how I do it.
Is it easy for you? I mean, I feel like something that can be printed on like that, your mind must go racing when something new and hot comes out. You're like, should I put a whatever character on there or this thing? Have you tamed yourself with that and you don't? Or do you still be like, I'm going to have 100 units of this?
Yeah, I know. It's always so tempting, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to jump on those trends. I think only if you're printing one-offs is that worthwhile. Like if you're a print on demand, for sure, that's a way to grow. But if you are carrying quantities, no, it's scary. I'm still sitting on a bunch of stuff that I thought was
didn't age
well. Going to
well.
be so great. Yeah.
Speaking of that, though, what's stopping you from doing a print on demand or one-offs? Is it just not worth?
I noticed you had one you marked as sold out. I can imagine why, but maybe our listeners can't.
Yeah. So there's a great opportunity in custom. Obviously, everyone wants their own specialized thing. However, there's a lot of upkeep, maintenance, potential issues there. The technical barriers to printing on Tyvek, which is essentially a plastic that feels like paper, are very challenging. And so the machine that I have, that I basically was custom built with custom inks, is very particular. And in fact, I was running it on a PC that I bought at the same time I bought the printer, which was like over 10 years ago. So I was just praying to God nothing happens to that PC because that's it for my printing business. And, something recently happened to the printer that I just can't solve. And so now I'm in this dilemma. I'm like, how do I, move forward? And so it's a lot of upkeep, and it's a lot of your time producing things. So you have to make a decision. And that's a really important thing, right? We think, here's an opportunity. I should go do that too. No. The biggest lesson I've ever learned is that you just stay focused on one thing. Figure out that one thing that works with the best margin and stay in your lane. Because where you get in trouble is when you start going off and thinking, I can do this and that, and all of a sudden you're spread so thin that you're not producing anything and everything turns into a nightmare.
Yeah.
You start diluting your abilities. That could be possibly one of the key points of this whole, conversation that we're having is stick with one thing and do it really well. Because I think we all get into that thing where we're like, ooh. Somebody said to me, there's a few variations of my product. They're like, and then you can do this and you should have this with the dog leash thing. And then, why don't you do some colors? I'm like, slow down. I'm like, I just need to get this solid first. I just need to get this solid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that
makes
and
sense.
I just had the conversation with my wife 2 days ago. I was kind of mulling around the house, nothing really to do. You know, you build systems in your business. The whole reason you're an inventor and not a construction worker is because you don't want to have to be there for every damn little step. So some days I have nothing to do, and it's a glorious thing. But I also get bored, and then I made the mistake of wandering in her office, kicking my shoes around. I'm bored. What are we going to do? Isn't there more you can do? Can't you pay us more money? Can't you this? Can't you that? And yes, she's right. There's always things you can optimize, pictures you can make better, copy you can make more conveying. But sometimes you just got to let what's working work, relax, and assess. I'm finally in a decent enough spot to where I can pay my ads guy X a day, and I know I'm getting Y a day from it. Our products are all working fine. Our customers are all happy. I haven't had a moment of clarity like that since I started this business. So now I take this time to kind of relax, think of new ideas. But it's not like the moment you don't have something to do, you go invent something new, and maybe you skip the engineering process, or you do it too hastily, and you just crash all that work, all that you shot your chance at profit that year. So much can go wrong. So it's important to curb your enthusiasm a little bit.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask you guys while you're here, I want to read off a Reddit question. I love this because there's these forums where people will ask questions and the answers are very formulaic, right? Because you don't want to type out a thesis on how to help a person. You got to be concise, but at the same time, it's not something that can be answered so easily on a forum. So without further ado, how do I get started inventing ideas? Looking for some advice on where to start with taking an idea and turning it into a product. Background: mechanical engineer with 10 years experience modeling and drafting with SolidWorks. I've done a lot of software development for business operations / design automation with .NET and Python. I have computers, software, 3D printer, all ready, and have a good group of friends who are all engineers also, mechanical, electrical, hydraulics, etc. I currently have 3 really solid ideas, but I have no clue where to start. Anyone got some advice for a noob?
I mean, that guy doesn't sound like a noob. That guy sounds like he's 432% ahead of the average person. He's like, I'm a NASA engineer with space. No, I mean, make a prototype. You have a 3D printer and you have these ideas. Make your prototype and test the crap out of it.
I think what he's missing is inspiration.
Yeah.
It's there's no skill that he doesn't have, but it's like, where do you know, that's the one thing you can never replace is like when that moment hits and you're just like, oh, yeah. It's like, and that makes all the difference, right? Because that's where you start to get passion. If you're not passionate about what you do, it doesn't matter what your fucking idea is.
Yeah.
If you want to invent a new ladder that X, Y, and Z because you think, well, yeah, that might work, but the first obstacle you're going to run into, you're going to be like, oh, this is too much.
No, if you have a ladder, you can climb over it.
Yeah. If I knew where the drum button was, I'd hit it. Well, I think that, you're right, because when you invent a product and you start to develop it, every day you have to kick yourself in the ass and remember what you believe in. You know, you believe in the mighty brand, the mighty phrase. It means something to you. When I was young, my dad got injured by a bungee cord, blah, blah, blah. But you have to have that thing behind you that constantly gives you a push. So to this guy, I would say, find what motivates you. You got multiple ideas. We all do. I guarantee I could open your phone up right now and find your invention ideas notepad. We all have them. But you know in your heart of hearts which one you believe in the most, and which one that when someone says that's a stupid idea, you can laugh it off because you know in your heart it's a good idea. And maybe you don't know it for a fact, but you can at least lie to yourself. And if you lie to yourself long enough, it becomes the truth, and then you can push it to the moon. But like you said, Marcus, you are 432% ahead of everybody who has an idea, myself included. And
so out of those 3 ideas, obviously the one you're passionate about, and hopefully also a mix of what might be the most doable. And this brings me to the next thing is like, we have had comments, and kind of, I think all three of our inventions, I don't want to say they're easy, but they're pretty easy. Like yours is something that gets folded. Yours is strap base, and mine is metal. You know, there are tons of people who are asking about like electronics and how do you even go about those really complex. And the answer is we don't know that answer. We would love to have a guest on who has dealt with, who is in the process of, or who has a successful invention that was really hard to create and that takes, you know, it's electronic PCB boards or whatever it may be. We'd love that knowledge. So hunt us down. But yeah, I mean, I think a combination of passion and how.
Well, let's answer his actual question.
Yeah.
Let's be practical here.
Yeah.
What's the next step? My opinion, 3D print 25, sand them so they're smooth, get rid of those shitty 3D print lines, paint them, whatever you got to do. I don't know what your product is, but these principles are basically the same for anything.
Yep.
And put them online. Open that Shopify store, $30 a month. Take the photos, build it out, list them on Amazon. I don't care that you have 25. You have to prove that it can work. Don't want to do that? Head down to the swap meet. Head to a trade show. Take 25 on a trade show. Throw up a black curtain and a TV with a loop playing of what your thing does, and you just standing there with a big grin on your face. But you got to make it, and you got to test the market. You're going to learn more in a week of trying to sell than you will in 6 months of lying in bed thinking about it.
Sure.
Yeah, I would add too. Like, I think you're going in that direction. It's just like, where's the market opportunity, right? You're sort of like, that's at the point you're like, how do I figure out if there's a market for this thing, right? And so there are tools that exist now. I can share some of this stuff for the line notes, but there are like AI bots that you can program on your sort of customer personas, and then you can conduct focus groups with this AI personality and not actually have a focus group. So you can sort of test market with AI whether or not there's a marketplace for this type of consumer.
And how accurate is that?
I haven't used it yet.
Okay.
But I think that knowledge coupled with some like AI. I'm such an AI nerd right now, but like there's research on Amazon where you can search product categories and find all of the pain points that customers have for a particular product.
Okay.
And basically take that and figure out, well, what could I make better about this product?
Okay.
And so there's things there where you can start to learn, like, is there an opportunity here that I can start to make? There's already a market for this product. Does mine vary in this way, and does it solve the market need? So those are kind of like the next steps, I would say, for someone.
I love it. Well, I hope we helped him or her.
Yeah.
And let's move on to another one.
Yeah.
Submitted my first product proposal. I have finally faced the gauntlet and submitted my first product proposal to a design firm. I'm nervous and excited. I have high hopes, and at the same time, I understand that the chances are quite slim. Is it costing me a pretty penny? Absolutely. Is it worth it? I think so, but only time will tell. He or she kind of goes on about how they have other ideas, blah, blah, blah. In any case, the director at the firm seems positive about it. Sure, he's going to make $20K off of me, but it's time and resources to CAD this out, patent it, market it, and pitch it. Really worth $20K? I don't know. I feel like that's all. I'm sorry, my contact's rotating on me. I feel like that's all worth way more. It seems the firm has an onus to develop this with me to the best of their ability, because there aren't. He wrote this odd, because there aren't after the 20K. They aren't after the 20K. They're after the 20%, right? Which is very likely to be magnitudes higher than the 20K and potentially reoccurring income. What do you think? How do you feel about this?
I don't know if I gathered that story. Let's dumb it down real quick. So the firm that this person is, they're tied to that, or it's a firm that
I'm thinking it's like a 1-800-INVENT so-and-so.
Well, I think they're making their money on your 20,000, whether anything happens or not with it. And if there's 10 of you, they've made $200,000 on promising you something that may never go anywhere. I don't want to knock because I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I think that the truth also is nobody's ever going to care as much as you, and the promises after they have your money in their pocket is I would pretend those don't even exist until you have some sort of proof that you're actually coming to a concept with this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you've had any experiences of that stuff, but I'm always leery of the pay up front, big money. We'll help you prototype and do this. I mean, you can do that for nearly free on most things you do.
I'm like, big red flags are flying in my head.
Yeah.
Trying to not scream at this person on Reddit. They go like, what the are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so maybe this is a legit company with great intentions. Let's assume that for a
Give them
moment.
the benefit there.
With that factored in, you still want to have some skin in the game from their side. Like,
Right.
where's their commitment?
Right. This should
I mean,
be
we
reversed.
don't know very much.
Yeah.
But what is the motivation for them? Like you said, I found this this is a funny little side note, but like this guy had a online course where you could join for, I think it was $500. It was limited for like 1,000 seats. And in 30 days, he was going to show you how he made $500,000. And I was like, wait a second.
He just made $500,000
by
off of your
people
money. He's brilliant.
I was like, that's brilliant. And you're going to watch him take the money and go to the bank and be like, thank you
It's
so
going to
much.
be one line, and he's going to be like, from all of you, thank you. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I've been victim to these predatory people. They're out there from loans, from all different angles of the business. You know, they're going to promise you this, and then they're not going to. There's just no commit. They're not on the hook unless there's some kind of obligation they're under to either produce a certain thing by said date. And of course, we don't know all the background, but let's hope that there are some conditional agreements that it's $5,000 up front, $10,000 after X, $20,000 at the end of blah, blah, blah. Putting your money out front like that is a huge risk. And, I don't know.
Well, you said it's
terrifies me.
skin in the game, and we talked
Yeah.
about partnerships early on in a long time ago, a lot of episodes, and it really is about skin in the game. If you have one person putting in 100,000 and the other person's putting in a bit of their time, you're like, it's very different. That person can walk away with losing some time, but that 100,000. So in this case, yeah, if you hand over your 20,000, there's not that much motivation for them to care past that point.
The motivation is to do nothing.
Right.
Because anything from that moment on costs them money with no guarantee of a return.
Right.
Now, by contrast, $20,000, that's guaranteed $20,000.
It's a lot of money.
On to the next customer. They're playing a volume game of customers. I hate to break it to you, but think of it this way. If you were really giving them an opportunity to make income for decades, why would they put any barrier to entry on that?
Yep.
They should be chomping at the bit for that because there's risk, there's work, there's passion. They don't have that. They don't have risk, passion, or a desire. What they have is your $20,000. Thank you, next.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong too. But
too.
from everybody I've talked to and we've had on the show, nobody's had a successful play for any of those big time money up front will help you kind of places. But
No.
and if you have, again, we love success stories too. So
We're
reach
in
out to
LA.
us.
We Hit us up.
We have one more.
Last
Okay.
one. Seeking advice on navigating that kitchen brand OXO. Is it
Yeah.
pronounced OXO? Or?
Oh, yeah. OXO, I assume.
Okay. Seeking advice on navigating OXO's licensing deal submission policy for my kitchen product ideas. Seems like everybody has kitchen product.
Yeah. Well,
Double-ended spatulas. Got 2 cool kitchen product ideas and thinking about pitching them to OXO for a licensing deal. But the submission policy has no confidentiality commitments and allows unrestricted use of info, which is a downer. Any advice on how to handle these terms when reaching out to OXO?
I would not even want to start giving advice to that because that seems very legal, and I have no clue.
Well, you can disclaimer and say whatever the hell you want. None of us are lawyers, right? We good?
Nope,
Okay.
nope, good. I still don't have any advice.
Well, I want you to start, Terrence, if you got anything.
I would say you could start with some basic protections for yourself before you share anything, whether or not they act on it. I think this is the one area where having legal protections is useful, right? So if your idea is copied by somebody who's got, a big play in the market, you just hit pay dirt. Because if they make that foolish mistake of, say you have a patent or, reasonable protection on something, and you share it with them under these pretexts of like, well, yeah, we still don't. If they go and do something, man, you have a legal opportunity there. So, as long as you have something, baseline, you could even say like a patent pending, I wouldn't even wait. It just gets something, that you can stand on.
Yeah.
And just leave it in the application. Say, this is a patent pending product. And then they're not going to touch it.
No,
mostly.
It's in their best interest to do good business because it's 2024. We all have social media. If they ripped you off, you could go and make a TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook account titled "OXO ripped me off," and they know that, because it would be the truth. You have the paper trail. You're not defaming them. Again, this is not legal advice.
Right.
The point is, it's in their interest to do good business. They don't want bad blood out there. They're OXO.
Well, and the only other thing I'm assuming is that if it's a proper submission portal, then it's all regulated by the date it was submitted, how it's submitted. You've probably submitted drawings and all that. So it's kind of I think more reputable places are going to have those things in alignment, and you're probably somewhat protected by the process itself.
I agree.
I would say, again, that's what I would say, not being a lawyer and also not knowing that they couldn't put a variation of your idea because they like your idea. I don't know those things, but the other thing is don't not ever put yourself out there because you're afraid. Doing nothing with your idea is, I think, worse than getting it out there and trying to do something with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Before we wrap up, Terrence, can you tell me about the saddest time in your professional career?
Which one?
The one where you got on your desk and cried. No, I know you didn't do that, but maybe you did. Let's hear it.
That is a very real thing. So I've been in many highs and lows in the business. Hit the Inc.'s fastest growing companies list. It was one of the highest moments. And then also lived on the other side, the flip side of that. And there have been times where it was just like, okay, how do I even start? Like, where do I even go from here? Like I was mentioning before, the disappearing factory thing is a very real potential. And that happened to me at the same time that my then wife left me. Suddenly I'm a single dad to 2 kids, 8 and 6. Whilst my dad, turns out he had throat cancer. And my mom, within a month of that, has a staph infection in her hip replacement.
Jesus.
And my grandmother, who raised me, dies. And this is all in 3 months. And it was literally in a moment where I felt like, okay, well, I'm just like afraid to ask what's going to happen next. Like I didn't know where the bottom was. And turned out the basement had a basement. And so I was like, holy crap. It's like I needed to hunker down and like find a place that was kind of like where, as inventors, designers, we're always, facing challenges. So in some ways I was conditioned for this experience, but in other ways I was completely no element of life can prepare you for something like that. And then I had, I would sit at the edge of my bed and sit there and go, I would just feel like completely incapable of like moving. And I could feel the gravity of like the world pulling me down and like get back in bed, just have another drink or whatever. And I'd actually recently sober too at the time. So I like, what a time to quit drinking. And so I'd sit at the edge of my bed and think, okay, where do I begin today? How can I actually be active? How can I do something? And it was like, I literally made a conscious decision to say every morning I'm going to start with something positive. I'm going to be grateful for my breath. I'm going to be grateful for, it's raining, and rain is incredible. It's a magical thing. Look at that. Like, my kids are safe. They're healthy. I'm healthy. Every single thing I could be positive about, I would take and I would hold on to that for the day. And then it grew into like motivational quotes. I think a lot of us are inventors. It's like we're naturally drawn to those things to push ourselves further. And so I became almost like a quote junkie. And I had Post-it notes of all these inspirational quotes. I looked like some like religious zealot, crazy person, but it was keeping me focused and it was literally building a bubble of positivity. And that conscious act of saying, I'm not giving up, and I can still, with all these situations around me happening, I can choose to be happy. I can choose my path. It was almost like, it seemed completely irrational. I almost felt guilty at times for feeling like that I could smile while all this was happening. But I knew that I had to force myself to smile as a practice. And I don't know if you've ever watched this video, but you put a pencil in your mouth, and the act of keeping a pencil in your mouth stimulates the nerves in your brain that simulate your feeling of that kind of happiness and things. And taking power poses and feeling confident when I felt like at my worst. Those were all little daily exercises that grew in me with these quotes that became like a daily ritual. And then eventually, when I was like literally like, months into this, like maybe, I don't know, a year or so into this process of like being like every single waking moment of my day was just consumed by like, oh my God, is there even going to be a business in a month, in 7 days, tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I literally had this like, the artist in me had this moment of like, oh, what if I made a street art flyer? Like really in New York City, street art is a big cultural thing. And I would make these flyers that just said, be mighty. And it had 10 individual quotes on them. And then the fact of me having to organize that every week, find 10 quotes that inspired me, print these flyers out, walk around to different street lamp posts in New York City, tape them up, and then eventually they would come back to me from through Instagram. People would like repost them.
Look
be
what
mighty.
I saw.
Yeah. And I would get that message again and again and again. And eventually, like, what it did is it kind of like flipped the script on this feeling of powerlessness, where I was like, suddenly I had something to do, and we were saying like staying active, taking that next step. That's all you need to know. So that kept me in a state of action. And I say today, it saved my life. Like being in a positive mindset through that catastrophe was the only way I'm here today. I saved my company. I was $1 million in debt. I got through that. I'm debt free today. And I'm rebuilding my brand, all because, I refused to accept the circumstances given to me. And I decided that life is happening for me, not to me.
Yeah.
And that was when everything changed, right? Yeah. And I felt like that was in some ways a kind of incredible blessing, because as inventors, as creators, we're always facing those moments of challenge. And so every one of those things is an opportunity to grow. It's just that we're conditioned to believe that that's the end or whatever. And I feel so sorry for people who get to those moments and they actually believe it, because there's no end.
So the lesson is you can choose to be happy.
Yeah, choose to be happy. Choose to push forward. Don't say because of some external circumstance in your life that I'm a failure, I'm a da-da-da. No. those are just, there's something in there for you to learn. And if you take it like that, then you're like, okay, this is, and now I'm like, I'm so motivated now. Dude, there's nothing I can come that is going to come in my way that I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'm going to give up now.
Great.
Ain't happening.
That's amazing, man. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to run into it. Everybody needs it. A lot of people have books, things like that they fall back on when they need motivation. Some people aren't into books, and you found what works for you on a really deep level. Thanks again, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was really a lot of fun.